All right. Happy Sabbath, everybody. All right. Delving back into the series on understanding the Bible. We just wrapped up the prophet Daniel, and that brings us to Hosea, which is the head of the minor prophets. So the minor prophets, if you remember, we've been utilizing this concept here, is in amongst the prophets, and it's within the realm of Judaism is considered one book. It's called, like, it's known as the 12. They're called the minor prophets within our English thing, not because they're underage, or or because they don't really matter as much as it's a minor prophecy, not nothing great. No, it's because they're smaller books. But like I said, within Judaism, they're one book. Because remember, the 39 books of the Old Testament, they count as 22. That's because 12 of these here, for example, are one. So we're going to come at this one book today, and we're going to look at the minor prophets. Now, that does not mean we're covering the whole book today. We're not. All right? Yeah, it's okay. Relax. Relax. Hosea, Joel, Amos, Obadiah, Jonah, Micah. You guys remember the song? Nahum, Habakkuk, Zephaniah, Haggai, Zechariah, and Malachi are the ending of our Old Testament canon. But if you see here, they're not put here in chronological fashion. Some of these prophets overlap. Some are well ahead of others. Some of them, as we see here, if you may notice, the second one down, Joel, there is various opinions as to when Joel lived and prophesied, and it's a great variance. It could be that Joel was one who was there at the time before the northern kingdom was taken. He was there, and we'll look at that briefly when we get to the book of Joel. Or it could be that he was right about the time of, say, Jeremiah, and when the southern kingdom was being taken. So what we're going to do today, we're going to cover in overview Hosea and Joel. And not sure how this is going to proceed as we go through the minor prophets, how many more parts it'll take to get through it. But here's the course, what we're looking at. Hosea was circa 758 to 722, or maybe it was probably written just a little bit before that, because 722 is when they were taken out. The northern house was taken out. And we'll see from Hosea 1 when he was, because he mentions the kings of the northern and the southern houses. Essentially, this book is about the faithless and the faithful. All right. You can also say the unfaithful, faithless, and the faithful. All right. So with Hosea, he was here in the time period of right around Amos, Jonah, and Micah in the southern kingdom. In the north kingdom, you had Isaiah and Micah going on in this time period. It's basically from King Uzziah, also known as Azariah, through Hezekiah on the south side there, and then on the north side, it would be Jeroboam II through Hoshea in that time period. Hosea is when they got carried out. So I actually have two slides here of key verses in Hosea. Hosea has some good stuff in it. It's the word of God, of course. It has good stuff in it, but some really good looking into the messianic hope and the outpouring of the Spirit and other such things. So There's some key verses in here. Hosea 1:2, the beginning of the word of the Lord by Hosea. And the Lord said to Hosea, go take a wife of whoredoms and children of whoredoms, for the land has committed great whoredom, departing from the Lord. And so we'll read this into the record as we get into that. But you essentially see how God asked Hosea to portray his own relationship with Israel by taking Gomer to wife. And verses 10 to 11 in the same chapter, he says, yet the number of the children of Israel shall be as the sand of the sea, which cannot be measured nor numbered. And it shall come to pass that in the place where it was said to them, you are not my people, there it shall be said to them, you are the sons of the living God. Then shall the children of Judah and the children of Israel be gathered together and appoint themselves one head, and they shall come up out of the land, for great shall be the day of Jezreel. Hosea 2:23, in similar fashion, he says, I will sow her unto me in the earth, and I will have mercy upon her that had not obtained mercy. I will say to them which were not my people, you are my people, and they shall say, you are my God. Remember, I thought this is a key phrase throughout these things, pointing to the messianic covenant, the eternal covenant, the new covenant. And Hosea 4:6, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Because you have rejected knowledge, I also will reject you, that you will be no priest to me. Seeing that you have forgotten the law of your God, I will also forget your children. All right. So we'll see what that is contextually. Hosea 6:1-2, come, let us return to the Lord, for he has torn and he will heal us. He has smitten, he will bind us up. After 2 days will he revive us, and the third day he will raise us up, and we shall live in his sight. Also in that chapter, verse 6, for I desired mercy and not sacrifice, the knowledge of God more than burnt offerings. 10:12, sow to yourselves in righteousness, reap in mercy, break up your fallow ground, for it is time to seek the Lord till he come and rain righteousness upon you. In 11:1, when Israel was a child, then I loved him and called my son out of Egypt. I hope you guys recognize some of these verses. They've been very key. They're quoted in the New Testament with fulfillments in there. So, like I said, this is Hosea is definitely one of those books that gets my heart pumping a little bit more. And these things that have direct pointing to Christ and the church and the happenings of the new covenant, this really get my juices flowing. Hosea can be broken down. I've seen it broken down several ways. Essentially, there's kind of 3 parts to it here. I have it broken down in 5, but in the 3 parts, we have like 1-3, 4-11, and then like 12-14. And each of them end with a chapter of like hope. Chapter 3 would be more into here, because it's as we've seen often through the prophets. Judgment, 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 because you deserve this, because you've been a lying, adulterous whore. You've been, judgment, judgment, but I'm going to help you. Judgment because you were wicked to the widows and wicked to the orphan, and I'm going to bring a nation in and take you out, but I'm going to save you. And so this is kind of the case here. We see this hope given at the end of each of these sections, like at the end of 3, in chapter 11 there, and then again in chapter 14. The way I'm breaking it down, 1-3 is the faithful and the unfaithful. 4-15 is God takes Israel to court. He's laying out the charges of what Israel's done. 6-11, we have Hosea's invitation, where he's inviting Israel to turn and to find redemption, but we find the invitation is tarnished by reality. That much like we saw back in the book of Judges, if you remember, I talked about how Judges is, I titled that the sin cycle, because that's constantly what was happening. It's like they would, turn around and do good, but just for a moment, it'd be fleeting. They turn around and do good, but just for a moment and be fleeting. And for some, that's the cycle they're finding in their own life. So it's good to pay attention to these things and see how to break that sin cycle. 11-12 That's really the last verse of chapter 11. So basically 12 through 13 is God's final arguments against Israel. And then chapter 14 is about the possibility of restoration. Again, a call to repentance, that there's hope that Israel could be replanted and can flourish and be a place of blessing for all nations, as it should be. And we know ultimately what that means, what that blessing to all nations is, right? It's not the nation. It's the man, Israel, the real Israel, right? So chapters 1 to 3, the faithful and the unfaithful. The word of the Lord that came to Hosea, he's the son of Beri, in the days of Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, Hezekiah, who were the kings of Judah, and in the days of Jeroboam, the son of Joash, the king of Israel. All right. So this gives us a time frame of when Hosea was and when he was prophesying these things. It says, the beginning of the word of the Lord by Hosea, the Lord said to Hosea, go take to you a wife of whoredoms and children of whoredoms, because the land has committed great whoredom, departing from the Lord. So he went and took Gomer, the daughter of Diblaim, who conceived and bare him a son. So now scholars are kind of out on what this talking about. Was Gomer a known harlot? Was she like known to be a loose woman already? Or was she just someone that God saw take her because she is going to fall away? And there's a question about that because, was Israel already a harlot when God took her? Or was he just took her young, and then as he took her to wife, then she turned to harlotry? So there's a question about what is meant by this. Yeah. So, but notice here, she conceived and she bare him a son. Okay. The Lord said to him, call his name Jezreel, for yet a little while, and I will avenge the blood of Jezreel upon the house of Jehu, and I will cause to cease the kingdom of the house of Israel. So here he's already prophesying, I'm going to cut off the northern house. Jehu was one of the kings, former kings, not long before Hosea's time. And he says, I'm going to cause this line to stop. And he says, and it shall come to pass at that day, I will break the bow of Israel in the valley of Jezreel. And then she conceived again and bare a daughter. And God said to him, call her name Lo Ruhamah, for I will no more have mercy upon the house of Israel, but I will utterly take them away. So I've talked about this several times in the past. This is some great prophecy, especially when it comes into the New Testament, these things. Paul quotes from Hosea chapter 1. We'll read that here momentarily. And Hosea 2 in relation to the new covenant and those upon whom he has mercy and those he calls his people. So it's very, very key stuff. Again, the Hebrew here, lo, which is no, ruchama, mercy, no mercy. So name your kid no mercy, because I'm going to have no mercy upon the house of Israel. I'm going to utterly take them out. But I will have mercy upon the house of Judah, and I will save them by the Lord their God. I will not save them by bow or by sword or by battle or by horses nor by horsemen. And there's a reason he's saying this, because part of his issue with the northern house is they were looking for bow and sword and battle and horses and horsemen of other nations to be their rare reward, to be their guard, to be their saviors. Namely, they're looking at Assyria, for one. And I find it interesting, as I was reading this, it was like hitting me. It's like how a lot of people, they look for something to be their solution to their problem in life, and their solution ends up being their next chapter. If they turn to a bottle, if they turn to a pipe or a needle or whatever it is, what they're looking for solace or looking for escape ends up becoming their master. And the northern house was looking for Assyria, and guess what Assyria became? Became their master. So some good life lessons there. Now, I've kind of wondered, doesn't say in here, I see what the first one, it says that she bare him a son. So I would say the first child, Jezreel, is his. Next one, it says she conceived again and bore a daughter. Well, I don't know that she conceived from him. And especially because the next one, now when she weaned Lo Ruhamah, verse 8, she conceived and bare a son. Didn't say she bore him a son. She conceived and bore a son. In fact, God said, called his name Lo Ami. You are not my people. Lo, no, Ami, my people. You're not my people. Yeah. So he says, I will not be your God. Call his name Lo Ami. You are not my people. I will not be your God. Yet the number of the children of Israel shall be as the sand of the sea, which cannot be measured nor numbered. Does this ring a bell to you? Paul quoted this in the book of Romans. All right. This is key verse here. And it shall come to pass that in the place where it was said to them, you are not my people, there should be said to them, you are the sons of the living God. Then shall the children of Judah and the children of Israel be gathered together and appoint themselves one head. They shall come up out of the land, and great shall be the day of Jezreel. So when Paul quotes this in the book of Romans, he says, Hosea speaks this things boldly, and he says this is talking about Jew and Gentile and how they become one. And this is in the new covenant. What's happening here? The ones who were not his people are now our people is not just Judah and Ephraim, but is Israel, Judah, and the nations who are called by his name. Some awesome prophetic word here in Hosea. But again, notice here he's making the point in verse 11. This should also give the people hope, because he had just said, I'm taking Israel out and I'm done with them. They're utterly destroyed. But he says, look, I'm going to bring Israel and Judah, and they're going to have one head again. It ain't going to be a king of Judah and a king, because that's where he began his chapter. Here's the kings of Judah, here's the kings of Israel. He says, that ain't going to be the case when this is all said and done. They're going to have one king. Can anyone here name who that one king is? Hey, that was quick. I didn't even finish the sentence. Jesus, the Lord Jesus. Amen. All right. Chapter 2, he says, say to your brethren, Ami, and to your sisters, Ruhamah. Why is he saying that? What does that mean? What does Ami mean? I just told you this in chapter 1. What? My people. Say to your brothers, Ami, you're my people. The I at the end of a word is generally possessive my. Like Eli, my God. Ami, my people. And to your sisters, Ruhamah. What's Ruhamah? It's mercy. Because remember, Lo Ruhamah is no mercy. Ruhamah is mercy. So say to your brothers, you're my people, and say to your sisters, mercy. Plead with your mother. Plead. She is not my wife, nor am I her husband. Let her therefore put away her whoredoms out of her sight, and her adulteries from between her breast, lest I strip her naked and set her as in the day that she was born, and make her as a wilderness, and set her like a dry land, and slay her with thirst. Saying, bring you back to how you were in the day. For their mother played the harlot. She that conceived them is done shamefully. For she said, I'm going to go after my lovers that give me my bread and my water, my wool, my flax, my oil, my drink. Therefore, behold, I will hedge up your way with thorns and make a wall, and that she will not find her paths. But she will follow after her lovers, but she shall not overtake them. She shall seek them, but not find them. And she will say, I will go and return to my first husband, for then it was better with me than now. She did not know that I gave her the grain, the wine, the oil, and multiplied her silver and gold, which she took and prepared for Baal. Therefore will I return and take away my grain in the time thereof, my wine in the season thereof. I will recover my wool, my flax given to cover her nakedness. And now I will discover her lewdness in the sight of her lovers, and none shall deliver her out of my hand. I will also cause all her mirth to cease, her feast days, her new moons, her Sabbaths, all the solemn feast. I will destroy her vines and fig trees, whereof she said, oh, these are my rewards that my lovers have given me. I will make them a forest, and the beasts of the field shall eat them. I will visit her upon the days of Baalim, wherein she burned incense to them, and she decked herself with earrings and jewels, and she went after her lovers and forgot me, says the Lord. So this is much like we've heard through the major prophets, and we saw it even in the Kings and the Chronicles and such, even going back to the wilderness. This continuous sin cycle, not knowing God, having a form of godliness, right? But kind of riding the rails. Looking to the world. Oh, here's what custom is. Here's what the culture is. I mean, yeah, that's kind of, I'll do some of that. Oh, but I'm in this nation and we say Yehovah is our God. So yeah, Yehovah is our God, but yeah, I will do this, but I'll do this, and and it's walking a double path, a double-minded man who's unstable in all their ways. And that's the continual thing that's happening. Sometimes it's more to the path of destruction, sometimes a little more to the path of righteousness, but there was not many who would be single-minded and love the Lord, the God only, and worship him only, as was commanded. So notice what he says about this, and again, how he's saying, look, you've done this, and I have reason, I am just to condemn you and put you out and do these things, but in spite of this, I am going to work to turn your heart from desiring these other men you're chasing after, these other gods you're chasing after, these other whatevers you're chasing after, because he says, I'm gonna put a hedge about her, and I'm gonna get her in, I'm not gonna allow her to catch up to what she's chasing after, and I'm gonna turn her back to me. So he says, behold, I will allure her, verse 14 of chapter 2, and I'll bring her into the wilderness, and I will speak comfortably to her. I will give her vineyards from thence, in the valley of Hoeck for a door of hope. And she will sing there as in the days of her youth, and as the day when she came up in the land of Egypt. And it shall be at that day, says the Lord, that you will call me Ishi, my man. No more call me Bali, my Lord. Ain't this saying I'm a master that you don't have a heart for? You're going to recognize me as your man, the one you have a heart for. I will take away the names of Baalim out of her mouth. They shall no more be remembered by their name. In that day I will make a covenant for them with the beasts of the field and with the fowls of heaven, with the creeping things of the ground. I will break the bow and the sword and the battle out of the earth, and I will make them to lie down safely. Right? These are the things we read about in the other prophets, like Isaiah, when he talks about, hey, there's going to be no hurtful thing in all my mountain. They could play on the den of the asp. They can be there with the lions. He's saying the same thing here. I'm going to make this covenant with the beasts of the field, with the creeping things. I'm going to make this covenant. They're going to be at peace with them. Right? He says, I will betroth you unto me, verse 19, forever. Yea, I will betroth you unto me in righteousness and in judgment and in loving kindness and in mercies. I will even betroth you unto me in faithfulness, and you shall know the Lord. It shall come in that pass in that day. I will hear, says the Lord, I will hear the heavens, and they shall hear the earth, and the earth shall hear the corn and the wine and the oil, and they shall hear Jezreel. And I will sow her unto me in the earth, and I will have mercy upon her that had not obtained mercy. I will have ruhama and lo ruhama. And I will say to them that were not my people, I will say to lo ami, ami, you are my people, and they shall say, you are my God. This is key because we keep hearing this, this phrase. I keep pointing out this phrase, you are my people, and they will acknowledge you are my God. Here, this is exactly what he's saying. Like, I'm going to have my wife recognize me as she. She's going to recognize me as her man. They're going to recognize me as their God, and they're going to have a heart for me. And then they can keep covenant faithfully, because it's not just by contract. It's not just some religious obligation, but it's from within, that they're turned and their heart is after me. This is what the new covenant's about. Being betrothed unto him in faithfulness. He says, and they shall know the Lord, because they think they know the Lord, but their actions show otherwise. Then the Lord said to me, chapter 3, go yet love a woman beloved of her friend, yet an adulteress, according to the love of the Lord towards the children of Israel, who look to other gods and love flagons of wine. So God says to Hosea, hey, go chase after your wife. Just like he just said in chapter 2, I'm going to take her out to the wilderness. I'm going to try to speak to her softly. I'm going to try to get her to come back, and I will do this. So he says, go with this woman who's gone after her friend. She's an adulteress, because this is what's happened with me in Israel. So Gomer had been unfaithful and faithless, and to the point where she becomes someone else's property. She's essentially a sex slave. And this is like the example, because he's saying, like with Israel is going to be in bondage again, and I'm going to buy her back. And so he tells Hosea, go buy Gomer back. So it says in verse 2, I bought her to me for 15 pieces of silver, for a homer of barley, and for a half a homer of barley. I said to her, you shall abide with me many days. You shall not play the harlot. You shall not be for another man. I will also be for you. For the children of Israel shall abide many days without a king, without a prince, and without a sacrifice, without an image, without an ephod, without teraphim. Afterward shall the children of Israel return and seek the Lord their God and David their king, and they shall fear the Lord and his goodness in the latter days. So he's saying, just like Gomer had left and got enslaved, and Hosea, you went and bought her back and brought her to her. He says, look, this is symbolizing what's happening with Israel. Israel's going to abide many days without a king, without a prince, without sacrifice, without image, without an ephod, without teraphim, because that was all taken away from them. They were taken out of the land and enslaved. But notice verse 5 there, he says, afterwards shall the children of Israel return and seek the Lord their God and David their king. Now, that is not talking about David, as in the son of Jesse. But we're talking about the David who is the root of Jesse and the offspring, Jesus, right? For clarity. Yeah. So I said, yeah, Hosea's got some awesome stuff in here. 4 and 5, here's where God, throughout here, God has taken Israel to court, saying what's going on. So hear the word of the Lord, you children of Israel, for the Lord has a controversy with the inhabitants of the land, because there is no truth, no mercy, and no knowledge of God in the land. All right. And the point he's getting here is recognize this thing of knowledge. That it's not just, oh yeah, like Job said, I've heard of you with my ears, but now, that now hasn't happened to them at this point. They have heard of him with their ears, but they don't know him as they should know him, that they would therefore have a heart for him and not be unfaithful or faithless. So he says, he's talking about their issues here. There's no truth, there's no mercy, no knowledge of God in the land. By swearing and lying and killing and stealing and committing adultery, they break out and blood touches blood. How many of the commandments right there? This the 10 words of the covenant. I'm saying, here's at least half of them. That's happening here on such a basis that here's the issue. Right? Therefore shall the land mourn, everyone that dwells therein shall languish, with the beasts of the field, with the fowls of heaven, yea, the fish of the sea shall also be taken away. Yet let no one strive or reprove another. Your people are they which strive with the priest. Therefore they shall fall in the day, and the prophet shall fall with them in the night. And I will destroy your mother. Verse 6 here, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge, because you have rejected knowledge. I will also reject you. You shall be no priest to me, seeing that you have forgotten the law of your God. I will also forget your children. As they were increased, so they sinned against me. Therefore will I change their glory into shame. He had, when he called Israel out of Egypt and had them in the wilderness, he said, you're going to be to me a kingdom of priests. Exodus 19. Point that Peter takes up in his letter to the church, that we are a people. He, again, cites Hosea and says that we were a people who are not a people and are a people of God, but he says that we're the kingdom of priests. And so he's saying, here's the issue. Look, you're supposed to be a priest to me, and you're not going to be that priest to me because you don't even know me. These things I said before you've rejected. You reject knowing me. And he says, and as I increased you, as I gave you these blessings, the more I blessed you, the more you sinned against me. You got all puffed up in yourself. So I'm going to change your glory into shame. Hear this, O priest, and hearken, O house of Israel. Give ear, O house of the king. Judgment is towards you, because you have been a snare on Mizpah and a net spread around Tabor. The revolters are found and make slaughter, but I have been a rebuker of them all. I know Ephraim. Israel is not hid from me. So now, O Ephraim, you commit whoredom, and Israel is defiled. They will not frame their doings to turn to their God, for the spirit of whoredom is in the midst of them, and they have not known the Lord. Right? The pride of Israel, verse 5, does testify to his face. Therefore shall Israel and Ephraim fall in their iniquity. Judah shall also fall with them. So here he's saying, look, it's not this guy. The southern house is not far behind you in what's happening here. They shall go with their flocks, with their herds to seek the Lord, but they shall not find him. He has withdrawn himself from them. They have done treacherously against the Lord. They have begotten strange children. Remember what I was just saying about Hosea and Gomer? She conceived and bore, and he's like, you're like that. You're bearing children in my house, but they're not my children. Because remember the example where it said, if you were Abraham's children, you would do his works. So that's why he's saying, you're not my children. If you were my children, you'd be being like me. But you're not my children. You're strange children. You don't act like me. How can I possibly be your father? A month shall devour them with their portions. Blow the cornet in Gibeah, the trumpet in Ramah. Cry aloud at Beth-Havan. After you, O Benjamin. Ephraim shall be desolate in the day of rebuke. Among the tribes of Israel have I made known that which shall surely be. The princes of Judah were like them that remove the bound. Therefore I will pour out my wrath upon them like water. Ephraim is oppressed and broken in judgment, because he has willfully walked after the commandment. Therefore I will be unto Ephraim as a moth, to the house of Judah as rottenness. When Ephraim saw his sickness and Judah saw his wound, then went Ephraim to the Assyrian and sent to King Yerib. Yet he could not heal you, nor cure you of your wound. I will be unto Ephraim as a lion, as a young lion to the house of Judah. Even I, will tear and go away. I will take away, and none shall rescue him. I will go and return to my place till they acknowledge their offense and seek my face. And in their affliction, they will seek me early. So he's saying, here's laying out one of the charges about, Israel from the beginning. You went a whoring, chasing after Baalim, chasing after Baal, and all these things. He's going to keep coming back to, you have always been treacherous, Jacob. You have always, you've been a thief and a murderer and these things from the beginning. You've been an idolater. And now he says, not only that, now you're also turning your back on me by looking to make Assyria be your savior. So here's another form of adultery, spiritual adultery, that was happening when they were looking to other nations instead of trusting God to be their guard, to be their king, to be their leader, to be their protector, to be their hedge. So he says, that shows your faithlessness in me. You don't put your trust in me. You don't put your faith in me. In chapter 6, we see him say, come and let us return to the Lord, for he has torn, he'll heal us. He has smitten, he will bind us up. This is, again, the core message of the prophets. Look, repent, O Israel, you've done wrong. Look, the judgment of God's coming. The day of the Lord is coming because you have done wrong. You've earned this. What you have sown, you are going to reap. But you're also going to reap something else you haven't sown, and that's God's mercy. He's going to sow that, and he's going to reap that, and you're going to receive the blessing again because he's going to have mercy on you one day. He's going to tear you, but he's going to heal you. He's going to smite you, but he's going to heal you up. After 2 days will he revive us, and the third day he will raise us up, and we will live in his sight. I haven't got to dug deep into that yet, but this is one of those verses that I wonder if this is what Paul was alluding to in 1 Corinthians 15, where it says, the scripture says that he will die and rise again the third day. Because here's an example of being raised up the third day and living in his sight in the third day. And there's question if the Hebrew can actually be referenced in that sense, that it's referring to the resurrection of Christ. And again, this is where our binding up in our healing takes place, is with Christ. So interesting stuff here. Drop down to verse 6. He says, I desired mercy and not sacrifice, in the knowledge of God more than burnt offerings. But they, like men, have transgressed the covenant. They have dealt treacherously against me. Go and learn what this means. I will have mercy and not sacrifice. Does that sound familiar? All right. Who said that? Don't say me. I mean, who said that before me? All right. Jesus. Go and learn what this means. All right. What does this mean? I desired mercy, not sacrifice. What does it mean? The knowledge of God more than burnt offerings. What does it mean? It's better to obey than to sacrifice. Right? If he desires a heart that is right more than religiosity, sacrifice and burnt offerings are one of the same there. So this is one of those doublets. I desired mercy, not sacrifice, knowledge of God more than burnt offerings. What again is this knowledge of God? It isn't just some esoteric or mystic or Gnostic knowledge of God. It's knowing him in his heart. We'll read later in one of the minor prophets what it is to know God. Right? We even saw it in Jeremiah. This is what it means to know me. Look that up. Knowing in the intimate sense. It's the whole picture being splayed out here. So his desire is that we know him and that we reflect him in our heart and not just play religious games. Because here's again, this is, like I said, this has been an issue throughout the life of Israel. A lot of times, religious reform, it's a work of the flesh when it's not of the spirit within the heart. It's amazing the things that we can self-will in our lives. People, all kinds of people who aren't led by the Spirit can set their face like flint to go do something. I'm going to lose 100 pounds. I'm going to quit smoking. I'm going to quit whatever. They can set their minds to it. But your will isn't always going to be the place that's going to keep you consistent with something. Unless our will is submitted to his will in every moment. Just because we have words telling us you shall and you shall not doesn't mean that's how you're going to live if it's not what's inside you. If it's just, hey, this is the construct, I'm supposed to stay in this frame, doesn't mean you're not going to climb over the fence. Because that's not what's in your heart. There was the construct of, yes, I take this man to be my husband. Gomer, Hosea, yet doesn't mean she stayed within the confines of the marriage because her heart wasn't there. And unfortunately, there are many who profess to be brethren who live the same way. And this should not be so. Jump on. Chapter 7, he says, when I would have healed Israel, then the iniquity of Ephraim was discovered, and the wickedness of Samaria, for they committed falsehood. The thief came in, the troops of robbers spoiled without. They consider not their hearts, in their hearts that I remember all their wickedness. Now their own doings have beset them about, and there before my face. Right? This is one of those themes that people often get their own construct or absorb it from the culture of what it means, what love does and what love does not do. Does God forget? Does he have some memory lapse? He doesn't remember sin? Because I know he says he remembers their sins no more, but what is that? Because here we know he remembers. He says, Ephraim, you're have you not considered in your heart, I see everything you have done. I know it. And now all these things, guess what? I'm going to put them on a plate and I'm going to spoon feed them to you. And you're not going to like it. Your own doings have beset you about there before your face. So he lays out all these issues. Drop down to verse 10. The pride of Israel testifies to a face. Do not return to the Lord their God, nor seek him for all this. These things are all happening. He says, and again, these things we went over in the prophets. Though I've done this, you haven't heard me. And I've done this, and you haven't heard me. And these people are there at your border, and you still ain't listening to me. All these things that are happening, you're sick from head to toe, and you're not hearing what the doctor's telling you is the solution. You won't receive me. Verse 11, he says, Ephraim is like a silly dove without heart. They call to Egypt. They go to Assyria. When they go, I will spread out my net upon them. I will bring them down as the fowls of heaven. I will chastise them as their congregation has heard. Woe to them, for they have fled from me. Destruction unto them, because they have transgressed against me. Though I have redeemed them, yet they spoke lies against me. And they have not cried unto me with their heart when they howled upon their beds. They assemble themselves for grain and wine, and they rebel against me. Hear what he's saying there. He's saying, these people are recognizing life is hard and things are happening that I'm not happy with, and I'm crying on my bed because, yeah, but you're not crying out to me. You're saying, woe is me. Oh, and maybe Assyria can save me. Maybe Egypt can save me. Maybe this or this or that. You're not crying out to me. You're not acknowledging me. Verse 15 says, though I have bound and strengthened their arms, yet they do imagine mischief against me. They return, but not to the Most High. They are like a deceitful bow. Their princes shall fall by the sword for the rage of their tongue. This shall be their derision in the land of Egypt. Now we're going to see this thing with Egypt mentioned a few times. He isn't talking about sending them back into captivity in Egypt, but Egypt stands for their captivity beforehand, because the captivity is actually going to be to Assyria. Right? So he says, I set my trumpet to my mouth, or he says, set the trumpet to your mouth. He shall come as an eagle against the house of the Lord, because they have transgressed my covenant. They have trespassed against my law. Israel will cry to me, my God, we know you. Israel has cast out the thing that is good, and the enemy shall pursue him. They have set up kings, but not by me. They have made princes, and I knew it not. Of their silver, their gold, they have made them idols, that they may be cut off. Your calf, O Samaria, has been cast off, or has cast you off. My anger is kindled against them. How long will it be here that they attain to innocency? How long can you claim you're innocent? These things are here. That there's evidence of your adultery. You have this golden calf there in Samaria. People come up there. You're not even you're coming up in the 8th month. There's evidence all around that you are cheating on me. How can you claim innocence? Verse 7, he says, they have sown the wind, they shall reap the whirlwind. So things, that's a phrase I thought about including that there in the key verses, because that's a good point to stop and think about. What are we sowing? Are we just sowing the wind? Are we just sowing things that have no eternal value? What are we chasing after? What are we concerned with in the day to day? What is our purpose that we're living for? What is our end goal in any of this? I surely don't want to reap the whirlwind. And I surely don't want to just be sowing wind, have no purpose, that the 1970 dash to whatever year it is I'm dead has no meaning for him in this life. I think it's important we think about what legacy we leave to the next generation. He says, verse 8, Israel swallowed up, now they should be among the Gentiles as a vessel wherein there is no pleasure. Right? Israel is to be cast out. Right? They are gone up to Assyria, a wild ass alone by himself. Ephraim has hired lovers. Yea, though they have hired the nations, among the nations, now I will gather them, and they will sorrow for a little for the burden of the king of princes. Because Ephraim has made many altars to sin. So altars shall be to him to sin. I have written to him the great things of my law, but they were counted as a strange thing. They sacrifice flesh for the sacrifices of my offerings and eat it, but the Lord does not accept them. Now will he remember their iniquity and visit their sins. They shall return to Egypt. Now here's what I'm saying. This isn't literal here. It's important when we're understanding prophetic that it's often talking in a poetic or a symbolic form. The return to Egypt is saying, I'm putting you back into captivity. And we're going to see that momentarily in the text, what he's talking about. Because here's the issue. Israel has forgotten his maker in building temples, and Judah has multiplied fenced cities. I'm going to send fire upon the cities. I'm going to devour the palaces thereof. Right? So he says, comes into chapter 9. I'll start here in verse 1 for a moment here. Rejoice not, O Israel, for joy as other people. You have gone a whoring from your God. You have loved a reward upon every corn floor. The floor and the winepress shall not feed them, and the new wine shall fail in her. They shall not dwell in the Lord's land, but Ephraim shall return to Egypt. They shall eat the unclean things in Assyria. Here's what the concept is, being sent to Assyria. They shall not offer wine offerings to the Lord, nor shall they pleasing to him. Sacrifice to them as the bread of mourners. All right. Verse 6, lo, they are gone because of destruction. Egypt shall gather them up. Memphis shall bury them. Pleasant places of their silver. The metals shall possess them. Thorns shall be their tabernacles. Verse 7 here, the days of visitation are come. The days of recompense are come. Israel shall know it. The prophet is a fool. The spiritual man is mad for the multitude of your iniquity and the great hatred. Once again, there's a lot of the things that we're reading in the former prophets about how they would have false prophets among them telling them peace, peace when there was no peace, or, hey, I had a dream and God said this and God said that, and was lying to them and prophesying falsehood and telling them to sin. And he's saying this is not allowable. There's going to be recompense. And he goes on here in these next couple chapters here to describe Israel in 4 ways. First one is found here in verse 10. I found Israel like grapes in the wilderness. I saw your fathers as the first ripe in the fig tree at her first time, but they went to Baal Peor. They separated themselves unto that shame, and their abominations were according as they beloved. And then he says in verse 16, Ephraim is smitten, the root is dried up, they shall bear no fruit. Right? Because, I found you like grapes in the wilderness, but for what? For what end? You're dried up, your roots dried up, you're going to bear no fruit. Then he says, 2, Israel's like an empty vine. He brings forth fruit to himself. According to the multitude of his fruit, he has increased the altars. According to the goodness of his land, they have made goodly images. Their heart is divided. Now they should be found faulty. He shall break down their altars. He shall spoil their images. So Israel's here as an empty vine. He says, took the fruit, brought it to himself, increased himself with stuff, brought it to the altars, increased what the priests have. They're willing to sacrifice for you and do these things, but then they take and they make images. And their heart's divided. This is the issue. They're having this religiosity, but their heart's divided. And it's not acceptable. Thirdly, I'll drop down to verse 11. Ephraim is a heifer that is taught and loves to trot out the grain. But as I pass over her fair neck, I will make Ephraim to ride. Judah shall plow, and Jacob shall break his clods. Sow to yourselves in righteousness, reap in mercy. Break up your fallow ground, for it is time to seek the Lord, till he comes and rain righteousness upon you. You have plowed wickedness, you have reaped iniquity. You have eaten the fruit of lies, because you did trust in your way and in the multitude of your mighty men. All right. So here again, here's the charges. You're following your own thoughts, your own philosophies, your own traditions. You're looking to mighty men of nations to be your guard and your source of protection. You've plowed wickedness. You're reaping iniquity. This is not what it should be. But here's what I'm calling for to happen. I'm saying it's time to break up your fallow ground. Stop being so hard-hearted. Because this is hard ground. It needs to clod. It needs to be broken up. So the seed of God and his word and his spirit can abide in you and produce fruit. So you could be sown in righteousness and reap in mercy. And it's time to seek the Lord. Chapter 11. When Israel was a child, then I loved him and called my son out of Egypt. Does this verse sound familiar? Huh? Zoe said, yeah. It's in the Gospel of Matthew. What does Matthew say was the fulfillment of this verse? Jesus. Short answer. Jesus being brought out of Egypt by his stepfather Joseph and his mother Mary after the passing of the king, right? Because he went down, because Joseph received the dream that the king was going to try to kill young Jesus, and so he took him down to Egypt, and then he brought him back up, right? So obviously in the context of Hosea, this was talking about the example of Israel, the nation. But Matthew says this is also speaking about Israel, the ultimate Israel, our Lord Jesus Christ, and pointing to that. So some will say, oh, Matthew was pulling out of context. No, it's not the matter of Matthew. It is the Spirit of God leading Matthew to reference this verse. It's God's exegesis of the Old Testament, which is amazing and exciting. So he says, I called them. They went from them. They sacrificed to Baalim, burnt incense to graven images. I taught Ephraim also to go, taking them by their arms, but they knew not that I healed them. I drew them with cords of a man, with bands of love. And I was to them as they did take off the yoke on their jaws, and I laid meat unto them. He shall not return to the land of Egypt, but the Assyrian shall be his king, because they refused to return. See, here's exactly what I'm saying. Egypt was put there as a metaphor for captivity. They're not going to return to Egypt, but Assyria is going to be their king, because that's what's happening. Assyria is the one who took them captive, because they refused to return. They've had this invite. Let's go in there. Turn. And they refuse to turn. The sword shall abide on his cities and shall consume his branches, devour them because of their own counsels. My people are bent to backsliding from me. Though they called them to the Most High, none at all would exalt him. How shall I give you up, Ephraim? How shall I deliver you, Israel? How shall I make you as Admah? How shall I set you as Zeboim? My heart is turned within me. My repentings are kindled together. I will not execute the fierceness of my anger. I will not return to destroy Ephraim. For I am God. I'm not a man. I'm the Holy One in the midst of you, and I want to enter into the city. They shall walk after the Lord. He shall roar like a lion. When he shall roar, then the children shall tremble from the west. And they shall tremble as a bird out of Egypt, and as a dove out of the land of Assyria. And I will place them in their houses, says the Lord. Ephraim compasses me about with lies, and the house of Israel with deceit. But Judah yet rules with God and is faithful with the saints. So he's saying, look, there's a time I'm going to stand up and roar. Yes, right now I'm roaring against you, but the time is going to stand up and I'm going to roar, and I'm going to bring you from the places of captivity. I'm going to place them back in your houses. All right. So that's, again, chapter 11, where I said each of these little sections kind of end with some word of hope. So chapters 12 and 13 here, God's final arguments against Israel. It says, Ephraim feeds on the wind, follows after the east wind. He daily increases lies and desolation. They make a covenant with the Assyrians. Oil is carried into Egypt. The Lord has a controversy with Judah, and he will punish Jacob according to his ways, according to his doings will he recompense him. Because Israel is coming back. Goes back to the beginning. This is before you're even a nation. Jacob took his brother by the heel in the womb, and by his strength he had power with God. He had power over the angel and prevailed. He wept, and he made supplication to him. He found him at Bethel, and there he spoke with us. Even the Lord God of hosts, the Lord is his memorial. Therefore, turn you to your God. Keep mercy and judgment, and wait on your God continually. He is the merchant that balances the deceiver in his hand. He loves to oppress. Ephraim said, yet am I become rich. I have found me out substance. In all my labors, they have none iniquity in me that were sin. They shall find none in me that were sin. I am the Lord your God. From the land of Egypt will I yet make you to dwell in tabernacles, as in the days of the solemn feast. I have also spoken by the prophets. I have multiplied visions and used similitudes by the ministry of the prophets. Is there iniquity in that Gilead? Surely they are vanity. They sacrifice bullocks in Gilgal. Their altars are as heaps in the furrows of the fields. So he's saying, look, these issues are happening here. There's been issues from the beginning. You got to learn how to prevail with God. Turn from your own arm, your own strength. In 13, he says, Ephraim spoke trembling. He exalted himself in Israel, but when offended in Baal, he died. Now they sin more and more and have made them molten images of their silver, idols, according to their own knowledge, all of it the work of craftsmen. They say to them, let the man to sacrifice kiss the calves. Therefore, they should be as the morning cloud. All right? So they're making these images. They're saying, go kiss the images. Right? You may hear that in the Catholic Church today. All right? With other such things. But he goes, continue laying out the charges. Verse 4. Yet I am the Lord your God from the land of Egypt. You shall know no God but me, for there is no Savior beside me. I knew you in the wilderness, in a land of great drought. According to their pasture, so were they filled. They were filled, and their heart was exalted. Therefore they forgot me. Therefore I will be unto them as a lion, as a leopard. By the way, while I observe them, I will meet them as a bear that is bereaved of her kids. I will rend the call of their heart, and there I will devour them like a lion. The wild beast shall tear them. Israel, you have destroyed yourself. In me is your help. All right? I will be your king. Where is there any other that may save you in all the cities? Your judges of whom you said, give me a king and princes. I gave you a king in my anger, and I took him away in my wrath. What's he talking about there? Who's the king you gave him in his anger? King Saul. And took him away in his wrath. Because he said, remember, because the prophet Samuel was like, they rejected me. He's like, God told him, Samuel, they didn't reject you. They rejected me. They're asking for a king. So he gave him Saul, which means asked for. You asked for it. Right? The iniquity of Ephraim is bound up. His sin is hid. The sorrows of a travailing woman shall come upon him. He's an unwise son. All right? And so he continues this word against the nation and what they've done and why they're going to reap what they reap. And the book ends in chapter 14 with these last 9 verses. He says, O Israel, return to the Lord your God, for you have fallen by your iniquity. Take with you words. Turn to the Lord and say to him, take away all iniquity, receive us graciously. So will we render the calves of our lips. A play on them with their idolatry, kissing their golden and silver calves. Now he says, this is going to be the sacrifice. We're going to bring words to you from a broken and contrite heart. This is going to be the sacrifice we bring you, the calves of our lips. Assure, that is, Assyria won't save us. We will not ride upon horses. We won't say any more to the work of our hands, you are gods. In you, the fatherless find mercy. I will heal their backsliding. I will love them freely. My anger is turned away from him. I will be as the dew unto Israel. He shall grow as the lily and cast forth his roots as Lebanon. His branches shall spread. His beauty shall be as the olive tree. His smell as Lebanon. They that dwell under his shadow shall return. They shall revive as the grain and grow as the vine. The scent thereof shall be as the wine of Lebanon. All right. So he's talking about how they're going to be this great tree that provides for the people. Ephraim shall say, what shall I have any more to do with idols? I have heard him and I've observed him. I'm like a green fir tree. From me is where your fruit is found. So who is wise? And he that shall understand these things, prudent, and he that shall know them. The ways of the Lord are right, and the just shall walk in them, but the transgressors shall fall therein. That's the ultimate thing. The ways of the Lord are right. Those who are just will walk in them. Same thing we read in the Psalms, in the Proverbs, throughout the prophets, throughout the law, throughout the New Covenant writings. All right. So that wraps up the book of Hosea. Joel is only 3 chapters. So I have on here circa 835 BC, question mark. Overall theme of Joel, by the way, is the day of Yehovah, the day of the Lord. 835, and that would put it on this chart here around the time of Athaliah, who was a reigning queen in Israel. It was a time when there was no king. She was a usurper. Yeah, she was a usurper, but she was a reigning queen. And so, like I said, there's some controversy about when Joel was written, because unlike Hosea, where it says, the word of the Lord came to Hosea in the days of the kings of, and the kings, it's not there. There's none of that mentioned anywhere in there. We see that who Joel is. We see who's the son of, but his father is nowhere else mentioned in Scripture. It's only in verse 1. So it's hard to place where he is. Now, because there's no mention of a king, this is one of the things that people look to. Well, here's a time when there was no king in Israel. There was still a temple standing. There was still these activities that Joel could be referring to could be happening here. Right? Another instance, some will look at Joel 3 and say, look, verse 1 says, behold, in those days and in that time when I shall bring again the captivity of Judah and Jerusalem, I will also gather all nations and will bring them down to the valley of Jehoshaphat, and shall plead with them there for my people and for my heritage Israel, whom they have scattered amongst the nations and parted my land. And then verse 6, the children also of Judah and the children of Jerusalem have you sold to the Grecians, that you might remove them far from their border. Okay, so some people look at this and say, well, this looks to be like around the time of the Babylonian captivity. Some even say maybe thereafter. And so they'll say, well, this is like maybe like the time of like Jeremiah, Habakkuk, Zephaniah, Ezekiel, around that time period, somewhere around 590 BC. Okay. I spent a little bit of time on it. And like I said, it's only 3 chapters. There's not a whole lot of context to figure this out. Ultimately, though, I would say the timing, whether it's 8th century BC or 9th century BC, or whether it's the 5th century BC, really doesn't change the message and the understanding we get from it. Any which way those things are passed. But again, this is exciting stuff in here. Namely, chapter 2 is really the meat of the matter in here. 3 chapters, the bread of 1 and 3 get to the meat of chapter 2. And that's why chapter 2, for the most part, are the key verses as I see them. Blow you the trumpet in Zion, sound an alarm in my holy mountain. Let all the inhabitants of the land tremble, for the day of the Lord comes. It is nigh at hand. A day of darkness and gloominess, a day of clouds and thick darkness, as the morning spreads upon the mountains, a great people and strong. There has not been ever the like, neither shall be any more after it, even to the years of many generations. Right? And then verse 12 to 13. Therefore also now, says the Lord, turn to you, even to me with all your heart, with fasting, with weeping, with mourning. Rend your heart and not your garments. Turn unto the Lord your God, for he is gracious and merciful, slow to anger, great kindness, and repent him of the evil. Now, again, I will reiterate this. Repenting him of evil doesn't mean that God's going to do evil. It's impossible for God to sin. God is holy. God cannot sin. Repenting him of evil is that he is going to not severely punish. He's repenting of the punishment that you chose when you chose to sin. And so that's the context of that. And then really key in here is the ending of chapter 2, verse 28 to 32. He says, it shall come to pass afterward, I will pour out my spirit upon all flesh, and your sons and daughters shall prophesy, your old men shall dream dreams, your young men shall see visions, and also upon the servants and upon the handmaids in those days will I pour out my spirit, and I will show wonders in the heavens and the earth, blood, fire, and pillars of smoke. Then the sun shall be turned to darkness and the moon and the blood before the great and terrible day of the Lord comes. And it shall come to pass that whoever shall call on the name of the Lord shall be delivered. For in Mount Zion and in Jerusalem shall be deliverance, as the Lord has said, and in the remnant whom the Lord shall call. All right? Does that sound familiar? Yeah? Where is that from in the New Testament? Book of Acts. What chapter? Chapter 2. What day? The day of Pentecost. All right? And Peter says, these men aren't drunk, as you're supposing. This is what was prophesied by the prophet Joel. All right? In other words, he's saying this has been fulfilled. Here it is. It happened 2,000 years ago. All right? So essentially, like I said, Joel is 3 chapters, 3 concepts. Chapter 1, the plague of locust. Chapter 2, the day of the Lord. And chapter 3, the Lord answers. Locust. Yes, this is the year of the locust. Here in 2024, it's one of the year of the locust because we're actually going to have the 13-year and the 17-year locust coming up out of the ground at the same time. So interesting. So I've seen some commentaries, articles, books and such that wonder if there was literally a plague of locusts that just happened that Joel's referring to. I don't necessarily find that from the text. In fact, I find what the text is talking about is using a plague of locusts as an illustration of invading armies who are coming in to devour up the nation of Israel. And in fact, that's what the text talks about, what the nation's coming in. But if you want to think it's about a literal invasion of locusts as well, I don't know if that's going to really alter your understanding of it so much. But he says, the word of the Lord came to Joel, the son of Pethuel. And it says that Pethuel is the only time he's mentioned. So it really gives us no bearing as to when this took place. There are other Joels mentioned in Scripture, but we know those other Joels are not the son of Pethuel. So that doesn't give us any help as far as the timing goes. It says, hear this, you old men, and give ear, all you inhabitants of the land. Has this been in your days, or even the days of your fathers? Tell your children of it, and let your children tell their children, and their children another generation. You know, there's some wisdom right there that, and I think a lot of ways in our culture we lost sight of generational wisdom, that people don't really give heed to the whiteheads and listen to. No, there's it's spoken about how there's wisdom oftentimes in the whiteheads that um, people don't seem to have the ears to hear anymore. Um, and unfortunately, at times I see that then that the whiteheads even get kind of lost up in the culture speak, because the culture speak becomes that of the younger generation who has not obtained the wisdom, and that becomes the thinking of the thing, and it erases any place of wisdom or understanding. It's important that we learn from history. I've often said it's good to learn from your mistakes. It's even better to learn from mistakes of someone else. So it doesn't have to be at your expense. We have a whole book of mistakes of other people that we can learn from. Right. So he says, that which the palmer worm has left, the locust is eaten. That which the locust has left, the cankerworm is eaten. That which the cankerworm has left, the caterpillar is eaten. Awake, you drunkards, and weep and howl, all you drinkers of wine, because of the new wine, for it's cut off from your mouth. Now, again, when I was reading it this morning, I was thinking, oh, isn't it interesting that he's sitting there saying, hey, you drunkards, you drinkers of wine, drinkers of new wine. What happened in Acts chapter 2? These men are drunk. They're drunk on new wine. Here it is right here in Joel chapter 1, that same concept. And then Peter says, hey, this is the fulfillment of Joel. You know, he says, it's cut off your mouth. A new nation has come up upon my land, strong and without number, whose teeth are the teeth of lion. He has the cheek teeth of a great lion. He has laid my vine waste and barked my fig tree. He has made it clean bare. He's cast it away. The branches thereof are made white. Lament like a virgin girded with sackcloth for the husband of her youth. The meal offering, the drink offering is cut off from the house of the Lord. The priests, the ministers of the Lord, mourn. The field is wasted. The land mourns. The grain is wasted. The new wine is dried up, and the oil languishes. So you say, hey, consider these things. What's happening? We're having issue after issue after issue, basically plaguing upon our land. Pay attention to this. Old men, tell this to your children, what's happening, and the next generation, so they know what's happening and why this stuff is happening. Verse 11, he says, be ashamed, you husbandmen, howl, you vine dressers, for the wheat and the barley, because the harvest of the field is perished. The vine is dried up, the fig tree languishes, the pomegranate tree, the palm also, the apple, even all the trees of the field. They're withered, because joy is withered away from the sons of men. Gird yourselves, lament, you priests, howl, you ministers of the altar. Come, lie all night in sackcloth, you ministers of my God, for the meal offering and the drink offering is withholden from the house of your God. Sanctify a fast, call a solemn assembly, gather the elders and all the inhabitants of the land to the house of the Lord your God, and cry to the Lord. Alas, for the day of the Lord is at hand, and as a destruction from the Almighty shall it come. Is not the meat cut off before our eyes, yet joy and gladness from the house of our God? The seed is rotten under their clods, the garners are laid desolate, the barns are broken down, because the corn's withered. How do the beasts groan? The herds of the cattle are perplexed, because they have no pasture. Yea, the flocks of sheep are made desolate. O Lord, to you will I cry, for the fire has devoured the pastures of wilderness, and the flame has burned up all the trees of the field. The beasts of the field cry also to you, for the rivers of water are dried up, and the fire has devoured the pastures of wilderness. They're saying, pay attention to Joel. Pay attention, Israel. See what's happening. Let me paint a picture for you. What's happening here? It's like we had locusts come in there, and what those ones left, the palmer worms are there, and then this one came in into this, and this one came in this. It's like we had a fire taking up our fields. It's like we have a dearth. We have animals crying because they have nothing to eat or drink. Priest, why aren't you wailing? Because there's nothing in the house of the Lord for you to eat, because we can't give you anything, because we have nothing. Do you see this picture I'm painting for you? Turn. Chapter 2. It says, blow the trumpet in Zion, sound an alarm in my holy mountain. Let all the inhabitants of the land tremble, because the day of the Lord is coming. It's nigh at hand. It's a day of darkness and gloominess, a day of clouds and thick darkness, as morning spread upon mountains. A great people and a strong. There shall not have been ever the like, nor shall be any more after it, even to the years of many generations. A fire devours before them, and behind them a flame burns. The land is as the Garden of Eden before them, and behind them as a desolate wilderness. Yea, and nothing shall escape them. Their appearance is like the appearance of horses, and the horsemen, so shall they run. Like the noise of chariots on the tops of mountains, they shall leap, and the noise of a flame of fire that devours the stubble is a strong people set in battle array. Before their faces, the people shall be much pain, and all faces shall gather blackness. They shall run like mighty men. They shall climb the wall like men of war. They shall march everyone up on his ways. They shall not break the ranks, nor shall one thrust one another. They shall walk everyone his path, and they shall fall upon the sword. They shall not be wounded. They shall run to and fro in the city. They shall run upon the wall. They shall climb up upon the houses. They shall enter in the windows like a thief. The earth shall quake before them. The heavens shall tremble. The sun and the moon shall be dark, and the stars shall withdraw their shining. The Lord shall utter his voice before his army, for his camp is very great. He is strong that executes his word. For the day of the Lord is great and very terrible. Who can abide by it? You receive this warning about the day of the Lord, because I think they had this view that, oh, the day of the Lord's going to be great because that's when the Lord's going to be there and these nations are going to be, and not understanding what punishment, what suffering they must go through because reaping the whirlwind with the wind that they sowed. You say, you're looking, this is going to be dark and cloudy. This is a time of judgment. It's not nothing to be rejoicing about. And so he's saying, here's what's going to happen. And he says, this is the Lord's army coming in. This is happening to Israel. Now remember in previous prophets, we read about, hey, I'm raising up Nebuchadnezzar. So he talks about how other nations are his army that he brings in. Because he talked about how Assyria was a rod in his hand. Right? Now, therefore, also, says the Lord, turn to me, even to me, with all your heart, with fasting, with weeping, with mourning. Rend your heart, not your garments. Turn to the Lord your God, for he is gracious and merciful and slow to anger, of great kindness, and repentant of the evil. Who knows if he will return and repent and leave a blessing behind him, even a meal offering, a drink offering to the Lord your God. Blow the trumpet in Zion, sanctify a fast, call a solemn assembly, gather the people, sanctify the congregation, assemble the elders, gather the children, those that suck the breast. Let the bridegroom go forth from his chamber and the bride out of her closet. Let the priest, who are the ministers of the Lord, weep between the porch and the altar. And let them say, spare your people, O Lord, and give not your heritage to reproach, that the heathen should rule over them. Wherefore should they say among the people, where is their God? All right. So here he's, again, calling to repentance and saying, here's what you got to do. Rend your heart, not your garments, because that's often the case. They tear their garments in some open show. He's saying, that's not it. You don't got to tear your clothes, but tear your heart. You doing this doesn't show me you're contrite. Doesn't show me you're broken. It shows me like you like to show. Right? Instead of a show, which we'll get to in the minor prophets as well. Yes. So he says, then will the Lord be jealous for his land and pity his people. Yea, the Lord will answer and say to his people, behold, I send you grain and wine and oil. You be satisfied therewith, and I will no more make you approach among the heathen. I will remove far from you the northern army, and will drive him into a land barren and desolate, and with his face towards the east sea, and his hinder part towards the utmost sea, and his stink shall come up, and his ill savor shall come up, because he has done great things. Fear not, O land, be glad and rejoice, for the Lord will do great things. Don't be afraid, you beasts of the field, for the pastures of the wilderness do spring, the tree bearing her fruit, and the fig tree and the vine yield their strength. Be glad then, you children of Zion. Rejoice in the Lord your God, for he has given you the former rain moderately, and he will cause to come down for you the rain, the former rain and the latter rain in the first month. And the floor shall be full of wheat, and the fat shall overflow with wine and oil, And I will restore to you the years that the locust has eaten, the canker worm, the caterpillar, the palmer worm, my great army which I sent amongst you. Because here, notice what he's saying there? I will restore the years of the locust, the canker worm, the caterpillar, the palmer worm. He says, my great army. That's the army he sent in. So I'm going to restore what they conquered. And then he said, you will eat in plenty, be satisfied, and praise the name of the Lord your God. It has dealt wondrously with you, and my people shall never be ashamed. All right. Then again, that key verse that I mentioned, you shall know that I am in the midst of Israel. I am the Lord your God and none else. And my people shall never be ashamed. And it shall come to pass afterward, I will pour out my spirit upon all flesh. These very things that took place that Peter says in Acts chapter 2, this is what was prophesied by the prophet Joel. What you see in here done here. Hey, was the sun turned to darkness literally? Yes, it was. Yes, it was. Back on the Passover, the sun turned to darkness and the moon to blood when our Lord was crucified and hung there and died. And the Spirit was poured out as prophesied by Joel. Chapter 3, behold, in those days and at that time will I bring again the captivity of Judah and Jerusalem. So this is again, like I said, so many of these prophecies we look at regarding the timing of the new covenant, the raising up of one king, the bringing back of the captivities. This is all pointing, if you have eyes to see, it's all pointing to the coming of Christ and the new covenant. That dream of Nebuchadnezzar of that statue, that stone coming down, in the days of those kings, setting up a kingdom that all nations fall into, because the gospel goes out to all nations and is all they become part of that spreading mountain that fills the whole earth, the kingdom of God. So he says, I will gather all nations and I will bring them down to the valley of Jehoshaphat, and I will plead with them there for my people, for my heritage Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations and parted my land. Right? And these are the ideas here, saying here's what's going to happen. Proclaim, verse 9, he says, proclaim this among the Gentiles, prepare war, wake up the mighty men, let the men of war draw near, let them come up. Beat your plowshares into shares and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say, I am strong. Assemble yourselves and come, all you heathen, gathering yourselves together round about. Cause the mighty ones to come down, O Lord. So I said, here's what's happening. Verse 14, he says, multitudes, multitudes, the valleys of decision, for the day of the Lord is near in the valley of decision. That's some exciting stuff. The sun and the moon shall be darkened. Same thing we read about in chapter 1, same thing we read about in chapter 2. And the stars shall withdraw their shining. The Lord shall also roar out of Zion and utter his voice from Jerusalem. The heavens and the earth shall shake, but the Lord will be the hope of his people and the strength of the people of Israel. So you shall know that I am the Lord your God, dwelling in Zion, my holy mountain. Then shall Jerusalem be holy. There shall no strangers pass through her anymore. It shall come to pass on that day that the mountains shall drop new wine, and the hills shall flow with milk, and all the rivers of Judah shall flow with waters, and a fountain shall come from the house forth of the house of the Lord, and shall water the valley of Shittim. Egypt shall be a desolation, Edom shall be desolate wilderness, the violence against the children of Judah, because they have shed innocent blood in their land. But Judah shall dwell forever, Jerusalem from generation to generation, and I will cleanse their blood that I have not cleansed, for the Lord dwells in Zion. That is some awesome, awesome stuff. Again, understanding these things in the light of the New Testament and God's exposition there on these Old Covenant prophecies, the Old Testament prophecies, just amazing. It gets my juices flowing, gets my heart pumping. So that's it for part 1, and we will be back with it next time I'm up. All right, that's it. God bless.